So going back to my first year of teaching, I honestly thought I had everything ready for back to school. I had spent the entire summer spending my days in my classroom, making it look cute, setting up the different areas, and I thought I was ready to go. But the reality is, once school started, I quickly realized that the first couple days where teachers have to prep for the school year was filled with meetings and trainings and barely any time to plan anything. And by the time my students actually came into the classroom, I felt like the entire back to school experience was extremely chaotic. I felt super unprepared, even though I had spent my entire summer getting my classroom ready. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that I figured out how to actually get prepared for the upcoming school year in a way that didn't feel as chaotic, in a way that actually felt calm and peaceful. And I was actually starting with a couple weeks ahead, so I wasn't feeling like I was behind before I even started. Well, today I'm going to dive into the mistakes I was making and how you can prevent making those same mistakes beforehand. So with that being said, let's dive in.
Hey, teacher bestie. My name's Helena, and I'm the creator of the Present Teacher podcast. I'm a first year teacher coach, and in this podcast, you are going to learn everything from simple, actionable classroom management, social emotional learning, and teacher wellness strategies. You know that impact you want to make in the classroom? Well, we're going to make it happen here.
So let's talk about what are some possible mistakes you might be making when it comes to creating a chaotic first day of school. Whether you're a first year teacher and you're not wanting to make any mistakes and start off your year strong, or you've had a similar experience like mine in the past where you spent your entire summer prepping for back to school only to have the first day go completely chaotic and those upcoming weeks as well. So, the first mistake you might be making is not having enough or having too much planned. So, I've had both extremes in the past where I have had a lot of activities planned or not enough and I ran out of time. And when you do this, you might also be making the mistake of not really having a clear structure, and everything feels very reactive. You suddenly see that your students are done, so you're reacting by adding this in or pulling this from here. You're very reactive in how your students are behaving with each other. You're putting out fires already, and it feels like there's just not a lot of structure. It's very by the seat of your pants. And it's very hard to go about your day in a calm, confident manner when you're constantly kind of just going, you know, reacting to how things are going throughout the day. So that's the first mistake you might be making. The second mistake you might be making is not focusing on the right things. So you might have spent your entire summer, like I did, making your classroom look cute and matching your theme and prepped, but maybe you didn't spend any time on classroom management. You start the school year and you're already dealing with disruptive behaviors. You're not quite sure how to respond. You're scanning social media, you're scanning YouTube, you're scanning all the resources for tips on how to deal with this disruptive behavior. And you feel like you're very reactive from the first day instead of preventing a lot of the disruptive behavior from happening in the first place. So, again, not focusing on the right things. Maybe you spent too much time focusing on setting up your classroom and not enough time on strong classroom management. You focused on setting up your areas and making everything look cute, but you didn't actually plan out transitions. How are you going to get your students from the seats to the carpet? How are you going to get them from carpet to their math books? And how are you going to do classroom procedures? What are your classroom rules? What are you going to do when a student is partaking in disruptive behavior? All of these things are things you haven't actually thought about. And so you're in the middle of the year trying to figure out a solid classroom management plan without having the time or space to do so because you have to teach at the same time. So you're simultaneously planning and prepping. So You might have activities, but you don't have a setup for student supplies. Maybe you set up different areas, but you didn't think about how you want your students to set up their supplies on their desk, where things go, such and such. You had the activities printed out, but you didn't think about, oh, they're not gonna have their scissors, so I need them to get out their scissors and open them up and write their names on it and put it in the bin. Or I need them to set up their desks and such. So you haven't gone that far. You focused on the classroom aesthetics, but you didn't focus on these other areas until the school day actually started. Another mistake you might be making is you don't have systems in place. Now, I, for one, am someone who loves systems. I have found that the farther in my teaching experience I get, the more I heavily rely on creating and morphing and just kind of evolving my own systems, the more automated my classroom is. But maybe your students don't know the expectations or routines, and you just jump straight into activities, and then you're feeling frustrated because you have students who are constantly under their seats. They're constantly talking over you. They're constantly running around the classroom. They're constantly interrupting you. They're not holding their crayons or glue sticks correctly, and they're breaking them. All of these things are good indicators that maybe you don't have systems in place and you just jump straight into activities without actually teaching the classroom procedures and expectations ahead of time. Maybe you're responding to these behaviors and putting out fires all day without a classroom management system in place. Again, it feels very reactive. You try to teach, you stop because to address disruptive behavior, you address it, you move on, you stop to address disruptive behavior, you start teaching and you stop to address disruptive behavior, and the cycle continues all day long. So, this is a mistake you might be making, especially if you don't have those systems in place. Now that we talked about some of the top mistakes you might be making in regards to setting up for the school year that's kind of aiding to having a chaotic first day of school, let's talk about what to do beforehand to prevent the chaos and to create a calm first day, first week back to school experience. So, the first thing I highly recommend you do is decide on 3 to 5 classroom procedures you'll teach immediately. Now, I always recommend to pick 3 to 5 and teach them the first day and review them the rest of the week. So, if you're not familiar, classroom procedures are how you want your students to interact with each other and with items throughout the room. They are the expectations, the habits you expect students to have. The reason I say habits is because if you practice classroom procedures enough, they eventually become habits to the point where your students don't have to think about them. Occasionally, you brush up on the habit, and your students or will help you run your classroom on autopilot, meaning they will do what is expected of them without you saying anything. So, like I said, deciding on 3 to 5 procedures you'll teach immediately and teach them on the first day and review the rest of the week. Ideally, you want to practice these over and over again until they become a habit, like I said, which will lead to an automated classroom. So here are some examples of ones I personally like to use in elementary. You're welcome to use these in the secondary realm as well. I do have some experience in secondary, but mostly I'm an elementary teacher here. So here are some of the ones I like to do in my 3 to 5. Getting in line, class call, raising hands, coming to the carpet, using the restroom. These are all good ones. Another one is if you want more help, I highly recommend you check out the classroom procedures slides that are done for you in my TPT store. Whether you want to grab them because they're already done for you, I show you how to teach them, meaning what it should look like, what it shouldn't look like, what it should sound like, what it shouldn't sound like. I give you the whole process so all the classroom procedures are done for you, or you just want an inspiration on some classroom procedures you can teach the first week of school. Definitely go check out which classroom procedures I have in that resource to give you a good idea in general of just some classroom procedures you might want to teach during the first week. The second thing on what to do beforehand to prevent the chaos, other than decide on 3 to 5 classroom procedures, is to plan out your transitions. Now, transitions, there was a study done, transitions are the #1 time of day for disruptive behavior to occur. And you can minimize it by practicing them like procedures. I like to think of my transitions actually as procedures, meaning we have a procedure or a habit on what it should look like, sound like, not look like, not sound like, to go from point A to point B. Getting in line, coming to the carpet, grabbing your math book, getting ready for math, going to lunch, washing your hands. All of these things are transitions that I treat like a procedure to the point where my students know how to do it to where it's a habit. And once it's a habit, they don't have to think about it. It's like brushing their teeth or brushing their hair. It's something automated and helps my classroom automatically run how it's supposed to. So I like to my classroom transitions. I've actually done previous week's content on this, so make sure to check out wherever you're tuning in from to or in the description for this. But I actually like to pair songs to my transitions. And the reason I do this is because I will have a different song for different transitions throughout the day. For example, I might have the song Happy with the Minions back when that came out for my students to get in line for, specials or recess or lunch. Maybe I have my students listen to the Kids Bop Shuffle whenever it's time to switch stations or rotate stations. All of these things I pair the classroom procedure with the transition. That way, later I can have it as a classroom job where somebody just hits play on the song and the transitions run without me. I don't need to be there clicking the button. I have a teacher helper, which is a classroom job, do it for me. So if I'm in the back working in a small group with 3 or 4 students and I'm wrapping something up, I don't need to pause what I'm doing to go transition the class. My teacher helper does that. So that is another tip I have for you is to make sure that you are planning out your transitions ahead of time. Again, I like to treat them like classroom procedures. The next tip I have for you to create a calm first day is to create a first day schedule that prioritizes calm and control. If you come in super high energy, super chaotic, super your kids are going to meet you. So let's intentionally create a schedule that really relies on that calm and control energy. So instead of doing random activities, I like to theme your days. What I mean by this is I like to, instead of doing a random TPT resource here, 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 I like to read a book, and based off that book, I like to do activities that help me teach the classroom procedures for that day and start incorporating those habits so they become automated. So a great example of this is I'm going to, again, go back to elementary here, but secondary, I'm sure you could do something similar. K through second. If you're teaching K through second, you can use Chester the Kissing Hand. I do have a video on this and resources on this, but I like to use this as the book for the day. We will start off the day by reading this, and then we'll start going into activities. I'll talk more about this in a second that go with Chester and the Kissing Hand. If you're in an older grade, maybe 2 through 5th, second through fifth, another one I like to use in my personal classroom when I taught upper elementary was how full is your bucket? If you're not sure, well, Chester in the Kissing Hand, Chester is nervous about going to school for the first time, so his mom kisses his hand and he's no longer nervous. How full is your bucket for third through fifth is, or second through fifth, depending. This one is about how everybody has buckets, and when we're positive with each other, it builds the bucket up, it fills it. And when we, are doing things that are not nice to each other, it empties our bucket and we start to feel mad and sad and such like that. This is a great book, especially for second grade and older, because it really builds on that community piece on how we can work together to build the classroom environment. And I actually get from the Dollar Tree actual buckets, kind of like this one. This one is full of pens, but I actually get buckets with my students' names on it. And I model what it looks like when you fill someone's bucket and when you dip from someone's bucket. So I really like using this. And then we have bucket dipper notes later in the school year. But I really love how you can use this story to be just kind of the basis for the class for the whole year and make it very interactive. So let's talk about how you can find or create activities that match the theme, whatever it is. But you map out the day with the procedure and activities embedded. So a great example for this, I'm going to go through Chester and the Kissing Hand, for example, I'll start off by we have breakfast if you do breakfast in the classroom, and then we come together and we read the story together. Then we do a scavenger hunt. By the way, I have a ton of free resources for Chester and the Kissing Hand in my TPT store, so make sure to check that out, including a scavenger hunt where we start off with reading the story, then we do a scavenger hunt. So I will put numbered hearts or numbered Chesters or numbered buckets if I'm doing the bucket one. I would read the bucket, how full is your bucket for the story time, and then we'll do a scavenger hunt. I will put numbers or letters, whatever we're working on, depending on the appropriate age level. And we'll go throughout the room and they have to find the buckets and or Chester or the hearts. And it's like a tour around the classroom, but while we're doing the tour around the classroom, we actually introduce procedures and transitions, those 3 to 5 I mentioned earlier. After we do that, then we dive into activities that are themed, Chester and the Kissing Hand, or How Full is Your Bucket, that matches our grade level. So when I set off, or when you set off with an intentional day like this, it's not chaotic because you have a plan. You're starting off strong with the read aloud. You're starting off strong by introducing the classroom, doing that scavenger hunt, giving them a tour, while simultaneously having them learn the classroom procedures for that day. And then again, the following days to come, you can then review. So that wraps up everything you need to know about creating a calm environment for that first day of school and to prevent it from being chaotic. So the first thing we talked about were mistakes you might be making when it comes to having a chaotic first day. The first thing is not having enough or having too much planned. It's very easy to have little to no activities planned or way too much planned. The second thing is not focusing on the right things. Maybe you spent your entire summer focusing on making a cute classroom, but you didn't focus on things like classroom management. Third thing, you don't have systems in place. You don't have ways to get your students from point A to point B. You don't have anything like that figured out yet. And so when you start that first day, it's very easy to feel like you're constantly putting out fires and that you're not actually getting to teach. Instead, you're dealing with disruptive behavior. So let's talk about what to do beforehand and to prevent the chaos as a review. So the first thing was to decide on 3 to 5 procedures you'll teach immediately. The second thing is to plan out your classroom transitions because they are the number one time of day for you to have disruptive behavior occur. And number 3, to create a first day schedule that prioritizes calm and control. We talked about theming our days and how that works for me and the teachers I coach to creating a calm, quiet school day. So that wraps up everything you need to know about creating a calm, cool, and quiet first day of school. If you want more tips on classroom setup and back to school, I have a couple of resources for you. First off, thank you so much for joining. I would love it if you could subscribe or leave a review wherever you're joining in from. It would mean so much to me so we can get more content like this to more teachers who would find this helpful. So thank you so much for doing that. Second thing, if you want more back to school content, I have a ton of weekly content now on back to school season. So make sure to check out wherever you're tuning in from. In years past, around this time of year, I have always done content around this topic. So definitely go check that out. Second thing or third thing I recommend you check out if you're wanting more free content is I compiled the top 10 questions I get asked about back to school and classroom setup, and I answered them in a free guide, which is the Ultimate Classroom Setup Guide. In this guide, I answer the top 10 questions I get in regards to setting up and getting ready for back to school. I answer those in the guide, and then for an additional explanation, a more in-depth explanation than what the guide answers, I actually linked to the podcast and YouTube videos that I created on that content already. That way you're not having to sift through my over 140 now weeks of content. You can just use the link and go to those resources in one space. So it makes it a lot easier to sift through all my content. So make sure to go check that out. Like I said, it's free. My gift to you as a thank you and just an easy way to get some of your questions answered. What are we on? Fourth thing I have for you is if you want me to share some of my done for you resources like the classroom procedure slides, back to school night, anything you're going to need for back to school season, I highly recommend you check out the Classroom Setup Bundle. This is a bundle that, like I said, has a ton of resources in it for back to school season. Everything from Meet the Teacher Night, slides, to back to school forms, to classroom procedure slides, to super improver walls, to labels, schedules. I mean, everything. So make sure to go check that out. And what I love about it, it's in 5 different themes because I am an elementary school girly. So I love having a match cohesive themes. And I can't tell you how many times I find a really good resource that isn't matching my theme. And I just want everything to match. So as of right now, it's in 5 different themes. So make sure to go check that out. And the final resource I have for you, maybe you have your classroom set up, but you want more of the strategy. Okay, Helena, what should I be focusing on to make sure I'm starting the school year right? I want you to go in depth with classroom management, with planning and prepping, not only the first week, but getting a couple weeks ahead over the summer. And I don't want to spend all summer doing it. I recommend checking out my program, Classroom Kickstart Mini Course. This is my mini course that walks through everything you need to know to create and set up your classroom strongly without creating burnout down the road and getting behind in less than 4 weeks. My goal in this program has been from day one. I don't want you spending 2 months setting up your classroom like I did, only to focus on the wrong things. I want you to have your classroom set up, classroom management, communication, planning and prepping, grading, all of it done in less than 4 weeks. So you can spend the other 4 weeks by the pool, traveling, walking your dog, sleeping in like I am. We don't need to be working the entire summer. You don't need to start off exhausted. So that's why I created this program. And over the last couple of years, I really have enjoyed working with my cohorts of dozens and now hundreds of teachers on setting up their classroom the right way. And this is honestly one of my favorite programs. I absolutely love it because every year it just gets bigger and bigger. And I love hearing all the wins from the teachers who have set up their classroom the right way and getting all that they need and starting off strong with strong classroom management and planning and prepping and everything. So definitely recommend checking out Classroom Kickstart if you want my help setting up your classroom in less than 4 weeks and you want to spend more time actually relaxing over the summer. All right, that wraps up everything back to school and a good first day of school. As always, remember we are stronger together, and I'll see you in the next one, Teacher Bestie. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. I hope that you were able to take away some value that will help you thrive inside and out of the classroom. It would mean the world to me if you could take 5 seconds right now and leave a review on this podcast. And if you found this podcast especially helpful, make sure to take a screenshot of this episode right now and tag me on your socials to let me know you're listening. As always, remember that we are stronger together with all the love in the world. Helena, aka the President Teacher. See you next time, Teacher Bestie.